Welcome to the Sunnybrook Family Ministry Podcast. We have some friends here that we are coming together today to talk about youth ministries and how youth ministries are doing amidst this pandemic, some of the positives that we've seen in what's been going on in our youth groups and some of the challenges that we've faced. And so we have some friends here that we've invited along for the conversation. We've got Justin Ebert from Sunnybrook right there.
Drew, to be fair, we have friends and
Everywhere.
Friends
Yeah,
and
Austin. Okay.
Yep.
So we just need to say right off the bat, I think we're going to do about 10 minutes or so where we're going to start this podcast off with breaking down The Last Dance as we've been watching episodes 1 and 2. So that we're going to get to that. So if you're going to wait for the main content, you can skip on a little bit further down. But we believe that, you know, this is an important thing that as friends, we need to be talking about. And throughout this, we're going to warn you that if it seems like there's a lot of inside jokes, a lot of, wow, those guys just are acting like no one else is listening and they're not trying to include everybody. That's true. Yeah, there's probably going to be about one other person that's listening to this. So first of all, I really don't care.
It's Phil. It's going to be Phil. Let's be honest.
Listening to this. And so we need also some therapy. And so we think that this is actually free therapy to make fun of each other, to argue about meaningless things probably, but just to hang out. So we have Austin Weece here from Carterville Christian Church, Justin from Sunnybrook, and Nate Anderson from Fairland Christian Church in the northeasterly part of our state, otherwise known as Salt Life and Green Country. So welcome to everybody. So we'll start right off with The Last Dance. This is a documentary that ESPN was going to release this summer. They're releasing it instead during this time where we have no live sports. And they just released episodes 1 and 2 Sunday night. This is chronicling the season of the 1997-1998 Chicago Bulls, the last year that they were together, the last of their second three-peats. And as I was thinking about this, and as Nate has reminded us, Justin and Austin were barely alive, old enough to remember this. They've probably heard of legends like Michael Jordan from their fathers and been passed down this knowledge. So they're going to be talking about this a little more like, yeah, I heard about that. Nate is going to be like, yeah, I definitely lived through that. And I had children probably close to at that point in my life. So let's start talking about The Last Dance. What did you guys learn about the 97-98 Bulls? And then they go back further and tell a little bit more about Michael Jordan's story growing up as a college basketball player and even at North Carolina, and before that growing up in his home. So we will start with Austin. We know that your dad has at least several Jordan rookie cards, and probably need to get some extra insurance on those cards right now that everyone knows that. But Austin, what do you think so far?
Man, I really enjoyed it. It's really good, really entertaining. Man, there's an obvious villain right now in the whole show, and it's Jerry. Gosh, yes. Jerry, what are you thinking, man? Like, you're gonna walk into Phil Jackson's office and say you can win 82 games and you're done. Doesn't matter at the end of the year. What? So that kind of stuff's kind of crazy. I was old enough to remember. I know where this is going, so I remember the last shot. I remember watching that.
Okay.
I don't remember where it was, but I remember watching it. I remember seeing it on TV. The last shot that Michael Jordan took. I remember everybody.
Do you want me to tell you right now where that was? That was in Utah, 1998.
No, not where I was. That's what I'm saying.
Where you
I know
were.
It was in Utah. I know that it was the push, Byron Russell, all that stuff. Okay. I'm a big enough NBA fan to know that.
He didn't push him. He didn't push him. He pushed him in today's NBA because it's soft, but he didn't push him back then.
Yeah.
Get that straight.
I remember seeing that. I was old enough to remember seeing that shot. I don't remember anything else about the 97-98 Bulls. So it's been cool to see, the backstory of Michael Jordan, even Scottie Pippen too. The fact that he was just a whatever guy sitting on the bench of Central Arkansas and then grows 7 inches and becomes the 5th overall pick in the NBA draft and, top 50 NBA player in NBA history, which is crazy. So, yeah. But
And so the Jerry that you're talking about is not Reinsdorf, correct? Or you're talking about Jerry Krause?
I'm talking about Jerry Krause,
Right.
the GM, right?
Yes, Reinsdorf was the owner, correct? Because I always got confused with those guys, and then Krause was the GM, the guy that basically gets in charge of putting the team together, getting everyone, all of the pieces around Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. So yours was a little bit more finding out some of this information about Jerry Krause. Interesting that like Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, I mean, they just made fun of him out in the open. It was like,
They straight
hey,
up bullied that fool.
hey, the short
great.
guy. Hey, the short guy.
Yeah.
It was great.
Just it's like,
You gonna
wow.
come warm up with us? We're gonna need to lower the rims.
Oh,
Right? And he said that.
oh.
And it was not. It was kind of in jest, but a lot more just jabs that were taken at him, right? And
Yeah.
Well, they didn't show the team bus where Pippen's going off on him and all sorts of stuff, because they show the razzing and then the making fun of, but that there's a lot of other stuff they didn't show. I think that Scottie Pippen's agent is an idiot. I think that Scottie Pippen wasn't too smart because he could have made a lot more money. Reading more up on Scottie Pippen, he lost about $20 million in bad investments after his career, I guess. But he married into money, so he's good now. So let that be a lesson to everybody, I guess. But no, I'm with Austin, man. Like the main thing, I knew some of the stuff about Michael Jordan, but not everything. But the Scottie Pippen stuff is really amazing. It's actually something that young athletes ought to watch and pay attention to, because he was an equipment manager at Central Arkansas to start with. And he just kept, obviously you can't control growing 5 or 6 inches in a summer, but he just kept working, he talked his way into a scholarship basically.
Yeah.
He just worked hard and became, when Michael Jordan's talking about him, saying stuff like none of this happens without him. That's a pretty high compliment to a guy that came from a family, this is his background, poor family, 2 people in his house in a wheelchair, 12 kids, just a dirt basketball court. That's such a big deal to think about, not just sports wise, but just generally for people. But yeah, young athletes, they need to watch that stuff, because I think what I'm taking away from it more than anything is just how hard those guys worked at what they did and how tough they were. It's just like mentally,
Yeah.
just the daily grind of it. Like the story when they're like, of course, you can't, I'm not going to say everything that was said on here, but if someone gave you 10 pills, that story with Michael Jordan, you had a headache and someone gave you 10 pills and 9 would cure your headache and 1 would kill you. Would you take the pills? And he says, well, basically, and it depends on how bad the headache is, like this is it. Like it's absolutely, just the toughness of the mental toughness of those guys and just the hard work. You don't get that good by accident, even though God blessed those guys with amazing athletic ability. You're not going to get there unless you go to work every single day.
Can we at least be honest with the fact that they were 6 inches away from being nobodies? Jordan goes from 5'10" to 6'3", 6'4", from not making his high school team to making his high school team to become this great player. Same with Pippen, UCA assistant manager or whatever to a scholarship player and draft pick because of 6 to 7 inches that they grew in college, right?
Yeah.
They were 6 or 7 inches away from being really good basketball equipment managers, really hardworking guys with crazy background stories, right?
Well, you can't deny that genetics and I don't know, whatever you want to call it, plays a part in a lot of athletics, right? The thing that I was watching it with Jaden and Avery, and they kept going, look at the size of those dudes' hands. I don't know if you guys noticed it or not, but they put their hands up. And Scottie Pippen had actually even bigger hands than Michael Jordan. But like they would do this a lot with their hands, and they're like, holy crap, how big are their hands? And I'm like, Michael Jordan's the only person in his family over 6 foot tall. And so in these massive like hands, and even Phil Jackson says that in interviews. It's like they ask him about the difference between Kobe and Michael, and he's like, Michael had these hands, man. You can't underestimate how much that helps, and all this stuff. And it's like these guys hit the genetic lottery. Honestly, that's just what happened. That's part of what happened. But a lot of kids, you guys see this, a lot of high school kids have really superior genetics as far as they're bigger, they're faster, they're stronger naturally.
Sure.
Than people, but they don't want to work at it.
It's that combination. It's the integration of the tenacious, I'm going to beat you at your own game with the genetics that creates the great players. You can have somebody who has a lot of God-given talent, and you can have somebody who works hard. The guy who works hard could be a bench player for his whole career. The guy who has great talent could get kicked off the team. It takes both of these things lining up. And then let's not the injury thing. That was something I learned today, is the fact that he was one bad foot move away from maybe not having a career.
Yeah.
If that thing would have been worse, or if he would have re-injured it or whatever, that's crazy to think about too. Yeah. Injuries. I wonder how many people out there they were one bad injury away from never being great.
But then you look at the fact that back then, the insurance on your career and the guaranteed money that guys are getting, from long-term endorsement deals and things like that, didn't have that. So he was really rolling the dice by coming back and playing, because if he goes down right there, this is before he got so big that it didn't matter if he missed a season or not, or his career got cut short.
I wonder on Scottie Pippen, just thinking about, everyone loves those feel-good stories, right? You love to hear the story about the guy that was the equipment manager for UCA and just kind of comes out of nowhere. And I wonder, even, does that story even happen today? Okay. Because at some point he had to probably play basketball in high school. It's not like he just has never touched a ball ever before. If this guy is, short at the time, in these days, you're looking at kids who haven't grown much, kind of coming up playing, instead of playing 2 or 3 sports, usually they're playing one sport, and the idea of them possibly being weeded out of the system early. And for sure, it was that case for Scottie. And more often, you hear about kids that are, hit their growth spurt in 8th grade or 9th grade, or maybe, some rare occasions it's 11th or maybe even their senior year. I have never heard this story. I haven't even seen this that much in a person, but someone that goes through this growth spurt between their freshman and sophomore year of college, that late, who's still hanging around and still gets this opportunity to play and still takes advantage of this opportunity. And I was listening to the backstory on this, because if ESPN does a podcast that explains each episode and does a deep dive into each episode of this series, which is kind of interesting. So I would highly suggest that you listen to that. But they interview the producer and talk about Michael Jordan. And one of the questions they were asking is like, okay, we need to know a little bit more about Larry Jordan. I mean, what was the deal on his brother? I mean, he was supposedly the better one growing up. And this guy, I didn't even know that he had a brother. I didn't even know Larry Jordan existed. And what was it like for Michael to be the one looking at his family and growing up? Michael's father was the one that was giving all the attention to Larry, the other brother. And so Michael seems to be his whole time growing up looking for this approval from his own dad, looking to get the attention from his dad. And did that in and of itself kind of create this hunger in him that made him into the player that he ended up being? But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead.
The hidden gem, though, the hidden gem of this whole thing. I don't know if you guys caught this. I think ESPN too, after the Last Dance first episodes. Did you see the after show with Jalen and Jacoby? Did you see that?
I think that was the podcast that I listened to. I got the audio of that. So
man, it's good. That's solid stuff. Yeah, he just gives insights of his interviews, and then they're just geeking out about Michael Jordan and Jalen talking about when he played him, and That's fun. That was I enjoyed that almost as much as watching The Last Dance, as watching Jalen Jacoby. You've been telling me, Drew, to get on that podcast for a long time, and I never have got on Jalen Jacoby. But
the other Jim that maybe the only one here that would recognize this would be Nate, but obviously would be the soundtrack throughout what's being played there, the different 80s and 90s hip hop.
Oh yeah.
Playing LL Cool J, I'm Bad, right during some of those highlights.
Yeah, I actually downloaded that right after the first episode.
Do you remember that? I mean, it just took a second for me to hear that song and sing that lyric to myself. Take a muscle-bound man, put his face in the sand. Boom, that's it right there.
Well, I call that a slow Tuesday, but still. Yeah, the other thing that's weird about, you can see it building, but and you guys know, even though, you're younger, you guys know how it ends, right? Like Austin said, it ends with that shot. And you would think that if Michael Jordan is truly fulfilled in life, that would be the way to go out. That's the storybook ending right there. Holding the follow through on the road as the ball goes in. That's the ultimate, what moment.
After stealing the ball from Karl Malone on the other end, right?
Right.
Getting the steal and then.
That's kind of his career in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Right? Make the defensive play, come down, hit the last shot, hold the follow through. And, he doesn't say anything to the crowd, but what he's thinking. And I can't say it on here, and neither will you, but you know what I'm saying. And it's like one of those things you watch as an athlete and you dream like that. That's it. The walk-off home run on your last at bat in the World Series, the game-winning touchdown or the game-winning field goal or whatever. And you would think that you just ride off in the sunset, but then you have this whole other commentary of a dude that's whole life and identity is wrapped up in basketball, and probably obviously comes back to the Wizards. And because he's probably going psycho. He doesn't know who he is outside of it.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of sad.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they tell that story as that unfolds post the 97-98 season, and how they kind of show Jordan and how his life has unfolded a little bit post basketball and post all the competition.
You get glimpses of it in that season of injury that they showed.
Yeah.
He's going back to North Carolina secretly playing pickup games because he can't stand to sit there and do nothing, and he can't stand to be away from it. And he's taking his career and putting a risk on it, saying, I'm willing to roll the dice at 90% because I don't know who I am outside of this.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I loved was he went golfing with Danny Ainge between game 1 and game 2 of that 85-86 playoffs. That is if that would happen today, if Russ Westbrook would have went golfing with Steph Curry during the finals, people would have lost their minds. Nate Anderson would have been tweeting, "Oh, this league is soft. I cannot believe that they played golf together during the playoffs. What a bunch of losers."
Russell Westbrook has no friends besides the basketball, though. We all know that, right?
Yeah, so, everyone said that about Michael, though. That's my point.
He also has no rings. So,
hey, if this season wouldn't have been cut short, I'm telling you.
Whatever, dude.
The beard and the Brody.
Candy and butts, we'd all have Merry Christmas, right? Anyway, so we got that was a different time, though, man. He went golf. He didn't want to go golfing with Danny Ainge because they were friends.
He wanted to make some money.
He's trying to take money from him and get in his head and send a message. They had text messages back then. He just say, "Hey, tell your boy DJ I got something for him," right? It was an assassin move.
Yeah. It was a boss move. Okay, so we're going to be getting a little bit more to, maybe we'll come back and maybe we need to break down all these different episodes together.
That was longer than 10 minutes for sure.
It was
right?
way
Every
longer.
2 weeks we come back.
Every 2 weeks we're going to break this down, and it's going to be 4.5 hours long. So
it's going to be awesome.
It is. My computer can't hold any more video footage. So shifting gears a little bit, obviously most of you work with, all of us work with students in our churches, but also the adults that work with our students in our churches. And so over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we have had something that has come upon the whole world that has really changed the way that we're doing a lot of things, including the way that we have been doing student ministry. And so this section might be somewhat interesting to volunteer leaders. I would say it would probably be most interesting to other student ministers. So if other people are out there watching or listening to this, maybe even parents would find this a little bit interesting. We've talked about this a little bit around our office, those of us that have randomly been in here. But I just wanted to just get your thoughts and input on different struggles that we'll start like on the positive side. We'll say opportunities, Nate,
and then we'll end on a really low note.
Yeah,
We'll see you later.
So Nate, Nate is having some struggles today. Before we started this, he came to this a little bit intense. And so we will go ahead with the opportunities that we have had over the last 4 to 5 weeks, and what that's brought for our student ministries, and maybe even how God has used this situation a bit. So I'll just start with Austin. Like, what have you seen? What have been some positives in your ministry and opportunities that you've seen that maybe you didn't have before, or maybe you had before, you just haven't seized those opportunities? So go ahead and share.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously we're trying to talk about like how to connect with students outside of the church building. It's kind of forced that a little bit, social media presence, being even just forced some intentionality with us on what that looks like, but not even somebody said it. I remember, I think I was talking to Tyler Lane, actually, who's another Sunnybrook grad up in,
Yes.
oh gosh, where is he?
He's
know that.
Pacific,
Anyways.
we'll say the Pacific Northwest.
The Pacific Northwest, yes. And he said, I was talking to him, they're kind of a little bit ahead of us in how this was affecting their ministry and their church. And so I was talking to him, trying to glean some things from him. And he just said, we're valuing interaction over consumption is what they're trying to do, and how they're trying to be a little bit more intentional. And that's kind of helped us with our social media presence, with how we engage students in programming in this time. But man, I would really say the opportunity we've seen, or the positive from this whole thing, like I've always known that that I can't do my job without volunteers. We can't effectively do our job without other people investing in students. Like there's a ceiling to me on my impact with students. I only have so much time, only have so many words, only have so much, only have so much energy. So I need to multiply myself. And man, I would just say our adults, our leaders, our volunteers, they have taken the call. They've answered the call for sure in this time, and they've continued to plug in and to invest in students. That's been really cool for me to see. To see some of our people that it's like Zoom is completely out of their wheelhouse, but they're putting in the time to figure it out. Leading an awkward game over Zoom, trying to engage students over Zoom, so it's just been really cool. It's given me a whole new appreciation for those people that are investing in our students every day. So yeah, it's been cool.
So what Tyler said really kind of stuck out there in my mind, valuing, what would you say? It was interaction over consumption.
Yeah.
Right? So I think one of the things churches and even student ministries may be guilty of doing is we really like to get the stuff out there, right? So here's my message. Come and hear me teach. Or here's the video of my message. Would you please watch it? And then here are some questions that are surely going to change your life. And would you sit down in a circle and please answer all of these questions in a way that makes us all feel good about ourselves and what we do? And that would be, I think, maybe something that we would all be guilty of. Give us some examples of the interaction that you guys have been having over. It's kind of ironic. It seems like we're valuing interaction more via technology as opposed to face-to-face. But what kind of interaction are you seeing, and how are you, I guess, encouraging that over the technology that we have?
I mean, one of the biggest ways we're doing it is through what we're doing right now, which is Zoom, trying to get students to interact with their small group leaders still. and connect that way. So our programming on Wednesday nights normally would, be everybody comes in and like junior high and high school are separate, and there's a game and worship and a message, and they go to small groups. So we've kind of kept that same format, but we went to YouTube Live. Like we created a YouTube channel and did YouTube Live stuff to try to because we're thinking of a sixth grader, 11 and 12-year-old all the way up to an 18-year-old. They don't all have Instagram, or they don't all have Facebook.
Yes.
We're trying to think of our live avenues. So we just thought YouTube would connect with most of them. Well, not most of them, all of them could get on YouTube, and interact that way. But so we do like live games, and we've done a March Madness bracket basically each week over different things. So what's your go-to quarantine jam was last night, and Take on Me by Aha was the winner. So
Dude,
but
we gotta pray for that group.
I know, right? I know. I don't even know. None of them were alive whenever that. I don't think I was alive whenever that.
You weren't.
I wasn't.
You weren't.
So.
You were not alive.
But yeah. So we like have them vote in the chat of that kind of stuff. Voting for their for the songs that they've submitted and stuff. So, but I don't know. I think.
No, I was just gonna say, it seems like the technology, and obviously kind of their situation right now, which is they're not in school, so they are home all day, all the time. And so it does seem like, instead of it being this, okay, we're going to be here on Sunday, then we're going to try to kind of catch up with each other, then some of us have midweek sort of programming and we'll see there again, and we try to keep everyone connected. Now it does seem like there is more of just this chatter, throughout the day. And so you're doing different things, to try to, this week with our junior high, we're doing push-up contest. I know that sounds really cheesy and stupid, but kids are pumped up about this. And it does like give ways to, it's almost like just these old school things, right? In a totally technological and new way that we're keeping kids connected in relationship, like even granted behind a screen. I would say one of the things that you were talking about, I work specifically, kind of oversee everybody kind of high school and down, but I work specifically with 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Some of our 6th graders were not quite on the tech train yet. Some of them still didn't even have phones. Some of them for sure didn't have social media. Many of them hadn't been on a group me before. So really within a matter of days or a day, we're creating this whole new sort of network that we really didn't have before. And I think one of the things that we've seen, especially with our younger students, and Justin, I would like for you to talk a little bit about maybe even some of the challenges or even the positive parts too with the technology in high school. But for our junior high kids, it was almost like a novelty, kind of. They had not been on this before. They had never been in a group me group before. My son Eli, who's our youngest in 6th grade, had never been on a group me. And so he's getting on group me. He's figuring all this out for the first time. And it was like you could not stop the chatter, because for many of them, like it or not, for their parents, some of them are using their parents' phones, and so their parents are like literally muting the conversation because they don't want to hear that all day long. But it's like, no matter if you like this or not, we're dragging you in. This is the way that we're going to be communicating, because we have to, at least in this time, we have to do that. But I think that's been a positive thing for us, is that I was, like you're saying, some of our older leaders, you're like, okay, I'm really sort of worried about if we're all going to be able to get on the same page here, if you're going to be interacting, if this is really going to work. And one of the things I wrote down in my notes is that you can teach an old dog new tricks. And that's one thing that we have learned a lot, is that even with myself, I'd gotten to the point of technology. It's like, okay, I'm so sick of trying to keep up with every new thing. And I've been strangely frustrated, but also at the same time a little energized to know, yeah, there are different ways that we can do things for a bit here if we need to. And some things that, quite honestly, we've learned have worked really well and may even stick, past this point. So I've been encouraged by that for sure. How about you, Justin? Any positives?
Yeah, I mean, Austin said the leaders, it's been cool that our to see leaders step up and just do everything we've asked them to do on top of whatever else they are trying to deal with in their own personal lives. And so our thing is we just do something short and fun, maybe a little devotional thought for 15 minutes with our high schoolers, and then send them to small group time where they'll spend more time, hopefully more intentional time, because it's just, you can't have a Zoom conversation with 70 people at one time. And so the small groups have been far more effective in that. And then just seeing what's going on the side as far as people in the church caring for each other. Drew knows this, but one of the things we tried to do during this is call every person in our church or every household in our church, see if there's any needs or how we could serve. And most everyone else was like, yeah, we want to do that. So you tell us, we're fine. You tell us what we can do. And just seeing that spirit among believers has been encouraging and positive. And seems like for the most part, people just want to see how they can serve. And so I've seen that manifested in how our adults have served students, even in ways that aren't ideal. And I just assume that's going to continue to change as the situation changes. You know, sometime in the next week or two, some of the stay for at home restrictions will be lifted for Oklahoma. And so I have no doubt we'll be doing some social distance lunches or whatever, as summer's kind of here and people can spend time together as we're a little bit spread apart. And I know there'll be some leaders and volunteers taking advantage of that. So I think that's been good.
Yeah. I think one other thing that we've seen is, like, Austin, you were talking about volunteers. It seems like we've seen a whole sort of different level of involvement in some way. So we have guys that might be gifted in technology, and I can think of one of our leaders real quiet that in the group setting might just kind of stay in the background. All of a sudden he's the one orchestrating the whole entire night on Zoom and how we're doing this. And that's been really encouraging to see, as well as you can see it in students too. It's been interesting. Some of the younger 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, the ones that typically are going to be the quiet ones, are all of a sudden like overly active on social media, right? And they're the ones that all of a sudden are doing the challenges, the ones that are kind of become kind of the hero or the mascot, I guess you could say, of things. And then another unique thing that we've seen, so I think it's been a little bit more of a challenge, is in the small groups. Our girls groups are doing great. Obviously, they don't typically, the girls groups, they don't have any shortage of things to say or to share. And so they're having their small group that goes an hour or more. And many of our guys groups are, it's like, wow, it was 7.5 minutes and now they're done. So I should be no surprise, but it's been interesting to see. Nate, now I know this might be a short list of positive things that you've seen during this time.
Oh, man.
Anything in your ministry context that's been strangely encouraging?
Yeah, really, honestly, I'm getting painted as the Jerry Krause of this conversation because I was in a great mood when it started.
Very fitting analogy. Very
That's
fitting.
all right. That's all right. I got a few pounds to gain before I get to Jerry Krause status. Anyway, I'm going to go a little bit different direction so I don't repeat some of the same stuff you guys already said, but I really feel like I'm going to come at this from a different way. And I know that initially this might sound weird, but I feel like the positives of like here, what's going on here, as far as like I'm concerned, or as far as like the student ministry stuff's concerned, kind of start with the fact that I feel like since the schedule has, forcibly been cleared, I'm not at ball games I literally would have been at a ball game every night, except for Wednesday, and then I would have been at a tournament most weekends, on and off. And so I feel like, a strange, weird way, I feel like I'm a better dad now, as far as being more actively involved in the kids' stuff, because I've been forced to become their geometry teacher, and their, like the time that I would be, not that I'm not involved, but the times that I would be sitting behind a fence, clapping and cheering, have been replaced by, a little bit more interaction.
Yeah.
And so taking that from that context of home, and it's kind of just reinforced the fact that, I sat there and thought the other day, I'm like, okay, if you are more actively involved with your kids because they're home and I'm home and there's opportunity there to work together, then, it kind of got me excited about the fact that when this does kind of move past, you kind of learn that there's really no replacement for being actively involved in the lives of people you're trying to minister to, being physically present and all that. But at the same time, you can, it's just kind of like, okay, here's something that can give me a positive attitude going into every day, And so trying to take that and, transition that into this interaction with students, virtual interaction with students. And so I think it's kind of sparked some creativity in all of our ministries.
Yeah.
That probably wouldn't have been there before because it didn't have to be, right? I mean, you don't have to get too as creative in certain aspects because you're going to have them all there on Wednesday nights and it's going to go this way, and here's what we're going to do. And now we've had to think a little bit outside the box.
Right.
And so it's kind of fired that engine back up a little bit, right? And I think that that's a good thing going forward because I don't know about you guys, and I might just be speaking for myself, but it's easy if we're not careful. It's easy to get kind of, not all the time, but it's easy to have moments of kind of stagnation where you're like, here's the routine. This is how it is. This, camp, all this stuff. And now with the possibility of, with the reality of all that being turned on its head, you have to sit there and you have to think, okay, there's still a group of students, right, that are counting on us to help them in their walk with Jesus.
Yeah.
But it's also been good to step back and say, you know what, on top of that, maybe this is an opportunity for me to do probably a better job of encouraging parents to, just like I've been, trying my best to do with all the situation, maybe encouraging other parents of students to be more actively involved in the discipleship of their kids as well.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with that because long after they're out of, all along after this moves on, right? And we're still back to what do we get? We get them an hour or 2, 3 a week, right? And the parents have to come alongside and other adults have to come alongside and help disciple these students, or you're going to see a fall off after high school. We know that. Not because of anything we've done wrong necessarily, because it takes more than just us. And we've got a lot of kids that are unchurched, a lot of kids that are the only person in their family that darkens a church door, but also a lot of kids that are at home now on a laptop or phone with their parents, overhearing whatever devotional thought we're piping into their living room.
Yeah.
Because they're not going anywhere. So, those kind of opportunities are kind of like, I'm kind of like you, Drew, like the frustrations are there, but at the same time, it kind of forces you to be more creative. And as you learn some things that are working and you see some things that could still be around after all this and you could take advantage of, it kind of gets you excited about adding that to the mix and then get back to the other. I feel like maybe all of us, if we learn from this and take advantage, we'll have a more rounded ministry. I don't know.
It makes me think maybe parents, I've never thought about this before, maybe parents right now have the biggest front door or open door, whatever you want to call that, to our ministries as far as kids that might be dropped off or may not be from our church, but we are like literally right there in their home at this point. So it'd be interesting to think about what churches and ministries can do with that moving forward. So we don't have a lot of time left, so let's just talk for just a minute or two about challenges that we're facing. I'll start with ours. I think one of the challenges that we've had is dealing with promotion. Like this is a time where typically our kids are going to be moving into new grades, new ages, new ministries. And so like, what does it look like now when that's not even happening? How do we promote kids online to a different ministry? Really trying to figure out like, how do we do that? I think we've basically come to the conclusion that we're going to try to wait until we, for the most part, get back into the building and face to face, have some sense of finishing up and closure with the current ministry that they're in, whenever that is going to be, and then moving up at some point after that. Austin, have you had any challenges quickly that you want to share, and maybe how you're facing some of those challenges?
I would say that like the challenges summer, so part of that is promotion, but part of that's just everything else we do for summer. It's so much of it is just hanging in the balance right now. So it's making a plan for, okay, if this happens and this doesn't happen, or if neither of these things happen, or if A, B, and C happen, but D, E, and F don't, there's so many starts to different plans and different ways we're going, just trying to figure out and discern through what's the best route to take right now, and what do we spend energy and time planning for, regardless of if it happens or not.
You got to be able to figure out if you're going to do something. And this phrase, I've texted a friend of both of ours that we both know, a phrase that I think I can do without ever hearing one more time again, and that is quickly pivot. We need to learn how to pivot quickly away and onto a different plan.
Oh gosh, can we stop with pivoting?
Nate, I'm going to give you 30 seconds, and Justin's going to close us out. Challenge what you've done. Well, you guys know me well enough to know I'm not like, I'm a social person, man. It's been tough. This is a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Our church is right across the street from the school. I can go over there pretty much whenever I want to. And just that's the biggest challenge to me. It's just the social interaction part of it that really builds a foundation for ministry and discipleship as far as I'm concerned. And so it's just been tough, not just with students, with good friends and with other people too. It's been a real struggle, and it's been something that I've had to, intentionally make a decision every day that I'm not going to whine and complain and gripe and be, tough to be around because of it. Because if I don't, I'm, even more irritable than normal. So it's one of those deals, man. It's tough. That's the biggest challenge to me. Okay.
It's just not seeing them, not hanging out with them, not being able to, and then you put that together with not knowing what's coming up and things being in limbo. And so the core kids are still hanging, tough, but a lot of those other kids that I would, normally see on a very regular basis, it's just been some of the worry involved there and the anxiousness about that. So.
Sure. All right, Justin, how about you?
I would say one of the biggest challenges has been, with student ministry in general. It's tough when the kids aren't the ones that are always driving to be there and want to learn. They're on the edge of their seats. Some of them are kind of like, hey, my parents go to church, so here I am. And so it's a little bit, how do I minister to someone who already doesn't care a lot in a lot of circumstances? And then beyond that, how do I now do outreach type of ministry? So you have the kids who want to be there and they are, working actively to grow. Those aren't the ones I'm worried about. They're engaging, they're showing up, they're asking what they can be studying and reading, they're showing up for the side kind of conversations and devos or whatever. It's those other two categories of the kids who are here, don't really care, and the kids that aren't here. How do you do those type of things? So it's been kind of that balance of, Drew, you mentioned earlier, we just create this program that they're probably not going to click on and watch? Or maybe do we start engaging the students to become the ministers? And so, hey, you're on social media all the time, so why don't you use that occasionally for some good, actually spread the message of Jesus Christ to someone else. And so, hey, video, Drew, you guys did this, the video yourself memorizing 1 Corinthians 15, or post this verse, or invite somebody to watch the Easter service, those kinds of things where it's not like it's going to be rare for me to create a new relationship right now over Zoom with some non-believer student. But all of our actual students who are coming, those group that want to be there and want to continue to help people know Jesus, giving them tools and ideas to do that. So
Sure. Well, guys, thanks so much. Appreciate all of your time today. It was awesome, first of all, to be able to talk about The Last Dance. Look forward to more conversations about that. I think we might just have to do that. And if people don't like it, I don't care. No big deal.
That's right. Because, that's why we pivot. I'm going to go work on my pivots.
Going to work on
reverse pivot.
Okay, you guys take care. Like seeing your face. It's been fun. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks a bunch.
Bye, guys.
See ya.